Inshallah, Assalamu alaikum. So we get started now. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. نحمده ونصلي على رسول النبي الكريم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيد المرسلين يا خاتم النبيين يا شفيع المذنبين يا أنيس الغريبين يا رحمة للعالمين. Continuing with the topic of Ahlul Bayt. So, last week, or not last week, at least, I guess 2 weeks ago, because we didn't have class last week, but 2 weeks ago, we mentioned, the incident where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he calls back the son for Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu wajh. And, that was something that I just kind of forgotten about, or rather skipped over as we were talking, and then I went back to it because this happened after Khaybar. And it's something I want to reiterate and kind of other points that are connected to it, because there are many lessons that we get from this. And of course, with everything, the importance is, what do we learn, how do we apply it, and how does it affect us? And everything should make us closer to Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if it's not making us closer to Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then we need to leave those things alone. So when we're talking about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when we're talking about Ahlul Bayt, when we're talking about the Sahaba Ikram, when we're talking about the Deen itself, if in talking about it, it's not making us love them more and be closer to them, then we're not talking about it properly. Okay. So when we look at this incident, and I'm going to go over the incident itself first. As I mentioned, Ali after Khaybar, and this was common, after the battle, or the battles, or after any expedition, or during the expeditions, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would send out various companions on certain specific missions to take care of various things. And so he had sent Ali, who is the conqueror of Khaybar, out on one of these missions. And by the time he got back, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, along with all the other companions, had already made Asr Salat. And, he was tired, so it's not uncommon, you take a break and then you make your Salat, kind of. So he sat down to take a short break, and then with the intention of getting up and making Asr Salat. And as he's sitting, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam comes and says to him that I'm going to lay on your thigh. And he lays his blessed head on the blessed thigh of Ali. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's blessed head is on the blessed thigh of Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu wajh. And he goes to sleep, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And as he is sleeping, the sun is setting. And Ali radiallahu anhu looks at the sun as it's setting, and then he looks at Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this beautiful face on his thigh, and again he looks at the sun, and the sun is not stopping. It's continuing to set. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not getting up. He's continuing to rest. And Ali is continuing not to move his leg so as not to disturb Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And of course he has this connection with the salat. Tears roll down his cheeks. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gets up, and as the sun has set, and he gets up and he asks Ali, he says, "What's wrong?" And he said, "Ya Rasulullah, so I had not made my asr." So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stands up and, looking at the direction that the sun has already set in, commands the sun with the command that Ali was in the service of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So now come back for him. Yeah, and of course, we know that the Earth's movement, because the sun is setting as the Earth is rotating, so it rotates the opposite direction to cause the sun to come back and for it to be the time for Asr again. And then Ali is commanded to make his Asr, and he makes his Asr, and the sun is up as long as he's making Asr. If he had made a long Asr, it would have been up for a long time. But he makes the Asr, and then as he finishes Asr, the sun goes back down. This narration, a lot of people say, oh, this is just made up. Everything that they don't understand or they don't want to understand. Anything that, forces the people to start thinking about the authority and the position of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and also the status and the love Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had for Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh. Suddenly the knee-jerk reflex for so many people is, that's just fabricated, has no basis for it. But when I look at this narration, it's mentioned by Imam Tahawi. And Imam Tahawi passed away 321 Hijri. He is in the midst of the time of the Muhaddithin, the scholars of Hadith. He is a scholar of fiqh, but he knows the Hadith very well. And he knows Aqidah. And he says that this Hadith is Sahih. It's also mentioned by At-Tabari, who accepts as Sahih. It's mentioned by Jalaluddin Suyuti and Qadi Ayaz, as well as Imam Dhahabi, all of who accept it.
What they were from?
Imam Tahawi was from Egypt.
Okay.
Imam Jalaluddin Suyuti was towards Iraq. Imam Dhahabi, I think, was from Sham. They're from all over. But these are, like At-Tabari and Tahawi, Jalaluddin Suyuti. These are well-respected. Imam Dhahabi, well-respected names in the field of Hadith, and as well as fiqh and Aqidah. So, these aren't, just somebody like these days who started writing something and didn't know what he was writing. So when they're writing these things, they know what they're writing, and especially if they, if they disagree with it, they'll say it. They'll write it, and then they'll say, okay, I disagree with it for this reason. If they agree with it, they say, that I consider this authentic. And all of these scholars have considered this authentic. Okay. Imam Dhahabi, as far as the knowledge of Hadith, is well respected as far as his categorization, as far as the people that narrated Hadith. Okay. And so another point here also is, if I look at all of the narrators of this Hadith, they are the same narrators that we find in Sahih Muslim. Okay. And if I look at the names, Imam Bukhari wrote a book, At-Tarikh al-Kabir, in which he takes the names of almost 40,000 narrators of Hadith, and he grades them as far as, gives their biography, what ideology they belong to, what, if they had ever known to have lied, if they were consistent in their practices, and all of these things about them. And if you look at the names of all of the narrators, according to Imam Bukhari's, biography of all of these people, they're all what they're considered thiqa narrators, which means authentic narrators. Narrators that had very good memory, as well as were never to have known to have lied. So we see this, with this narration, it's very, and there are people who, of course, there are always going to be people who dispute it. But even the people who disputed it, they've always been given an answer that they couldn't refute. Okay, because you're saying, okay, you got a problem with this guy or that guy. Well, Imam Bukhari didn't have a problem with that guy. So and so Imam Muslim didn't have a problem with any of these guys that are narrating it. So what's your issue now? And they can't say anything. Okay. But now, if I look at this, and I look at like Ali radiallahu anhu. So Ali radiallahu anhu is the number one faqih among the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He knows the Quran. He is the only companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam who could say that he knew when every verse was revealed, where every verse was revealed, for whom every verse was revealed, and why every verse was revealed. And that's something we're going to get into when we talk about the Khilafah of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. But just remember that he's the only one who could say this, and none of the companions could would even challenge him on it, because they knew it was true. All of them respected it.
Not even Abu Bakr.
No, none of them. He was the only one. And like you said, we'll see this, when we talk about the Khilafah of Abu Bakr radiallahu and the closeness between these two. And why Abu Bakr radiallahu made certain decisions in regards to Ali radiallahu. So we'll get into that, inshallah, as we get to that point in history. So Ali radiallahu understands, and he knows the significance of salat, the importance of salat, right? And that salat is the command of Allah, it is the right of Allah. But so why didn't he get up? Why didn't he wake up Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and say, oh, I need to make my salat? Because Ali radiallahu understands Islam. He understands the status of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he understands the implications of what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, I'm going to lay my head on your thigh and rest. That implies don't move your leg. That's an implied meaning there, right? Because if somebody's going to rest with their head on your leg, if you move your leg, they're not going to be able to rest. So yes, so Ali radiallahu Rasulullah has commanded him that I'm going to lay on my head on your thigh, which again implied don't move your leg. So the command is don't move your leg. So Ali radiallahu was going to move his leg, no matter what, until Rasulullah told him he could move his leg. And so there are some people who say, oh, this is look at this, because you're putting the command of Rasulullah over the command of Allah. No, the command of Rasulullah is the command of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran so many places, وَأَتِيُوا اللَّهَ وَأَتِيُوا الرَّسُولَ, obey Allah and obey the messenger. But then, how do I obey Allah? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that too. وَمَن يُطِعِ الرَّسُولَ فَقَدْ أَطَاعَ اللَّهَ. Whosoever obeys the messenger obeys Allah. So in obeying the messenger, I am obeying Allah. And here Rasulullah gave Ali a direct statement with the implication of don't move your leg. So even though, and that's directly implied. It's not, it's not like, oh, you got to go way out of your way to figure that out. And there are other times also where one time when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told the companions that they were supposed to meet him in a certain place, and he said, make usr there at this certain place. There were companions that got delayed and they didn't make it there in time for usr. Usr had already gone away. Some of them made usr on the way because they understood it to mean that be there by usr. Okay. But the others said no. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said make usr there. They didn't make usr until they got there, and it was already time for maghrib. And when they asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said both were right. But here, Ali is Ali. His understanding, like we talked about at Jummah, his understanding is, for lack of a better term, just way above, everything else. So he understands the command of Allah, but he also understands that whatever Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says is the command of Allah. وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. That he doesn't say anything from his own nafs, but whatever he says is nothing but revelation, right? And so, same thing here. So Ali understands this, and this is one of the lessons that we get. It is showing us the status of Rasulullah, but it also, there is a narration where one of the prophets of Bani Israel, they were fighting a war, and it was, the next day was to be the Sabbath, and they were winning the war. But if they had stopped for the Sabbath, then they would have, the enemy would have had time to recuperate, and then it would have been, harder on them later on. So that prophet made a dua to Allah extend this day. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala extended the day until they won. Okay. So this is one of the prophets of Bani Israel that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala extended the day for him after he had asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Here Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stands up and commands the sun, saying that Ali was in the service of Allah and His Messenger, so come back for him. So, and of course, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is Sayyidul Anbiya. He is the master of the prophets. Yes, everything is the doing of Allah. But here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us, teaching us the authority that He has given to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because when we look at like miracles, there are three different levels of miracles. There are those miracles that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does for somebody, and that person himself doesn't know that this was done for him. There are those miracles where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does it for somebody, but that somebody that He does it for knows, yes, it was done for them, but they have no input in this. Okay. And the example of that is like Maryam alayhi salam. When she was locked in the room and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the food. She didn't ask for the food. She didn't do anything to get the food, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just sent it for her. Okay. But then there are those miracles where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives that person authority. Do it when you want. Because He knows that they won't do it unless He wants. Okay. And so, and the same example of Maryam alayhi salam. And this actually is kind of a higher level of miracle, because again, that person is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them authority. So when Maryam alayhi salam, when Isa alayhi salam is being born, in the Quran we read, that she's hungry and thirsty, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells her, strike the ground and the water spring comes up, and shake the dead tree and the fruits fall from it. But she did that, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, okay, now I'm giving you authority. So when you want to eat the fruits, you shake the tree, they'll come. And when you want the water, you do this, and it will come. So if we look at the vast majority of the miracles of Rasulullah, even though technically every breath of his is a miracle, but if you look at the vast majority of the miracles of Rasulullah, it's where it's this authority And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us the authority that He has given His beloved. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Because again, this is, there's so many different aspects to this. So the same thing here. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam could have made a dua that, oh Allah, return the sun for Ali. But he didn't do it that way because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted him to do it this way to show us the authority that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him over all of creation. So he simply commanded the sun, but of course him commanding the sun is as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants him to do. So, I think that should be relatively clear. Any questions on that before we move forward? You're good? Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Okay. So now we kind of come back to where we were, because we'd spoken about Tabuk, where Heraclius was getting ready to attack Medina, and Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, of course, the hypocrites were the ones who stayed behind, and Ali then was left in Medina to take care of things there. And this is when the famous statement of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that is it to Ali that is it not enough for you that you are to me as Harun was to Musa alayhi salam, except there will be no prophet after you. Okay.
So you say Harun's the handwriting of Musa, right?
Harun was the brother of Musa alayhi salam.
He was the brother.
He was the brother, and also wherever Musa alayhi salam would go anywhere, like when he went to Tur Sinin, he would leave Harun alayhi salam in charge. So, and Harun alayhi salam, was basically his representative in his absence.
Is that Aaron?
Aaron, yes,
Okay.
Aaron, yes, that is Aaron.
What they call it in English?
In English they call him Aaron, Aaron. Yeah. That year, Tabuk happened in the 9th year of Hijrah, and so Tabuk, and then after Tabuk, you get a lot of delegations coming and meeting Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And so as they're coming and meeting him, and we've talked about this, this is when, he gives them gifts. Most of them accept Islam. They go back and the people accept Islam. So, we talked about like some of these delegations that came from Najd. But this is also when you get so many delegations that are coming from Yemen and Najran. And so this is when the delegation from Najran comes. And this is something that we've talked about before. So you get, and I don't know if we went, I can't remember if we went into any details on this last time or not. But this is when we get the priest that came from Najran. Because Najran, as we mentioned, was mainly Christian. And these priests also had connections with Rome and the Vatican and stuff, even at that time. And so they came and they wanted to debate with Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. In Surah Al Imran is where this is mentioned. The first 80 verses, for the most part, deal with this incident. And this is when, after they didn't accept, when the verse of Mubayla came, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, that, once clear proof has been given to them and they still don't accept, then, abna'ana wa abna'akum, that we bring our sons, you bring your sons, wa nisa'ana wa nisa'akum, we bring our women, you bring your women, wa anfusana wa anfusakum, and we bring ourselves and you bring yourselves. And we do Mubayla, which basically is to invoke the curse of Allah on whoever is the liar. And so this is when Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam takes under his cloak Hassan, Hussein, Ali, and Fatima. Salamullah alayhim ajma'in. So he takes them all under his cloak as he's walking for this. these are the only ones that he takes under his cloak, and he says, Allahumma ha'ulahi ahli, that, oh Allah, these are my family. And Christian, you know, when they saw him coming, they refused, or not, but they said, look, we don't want to do this. We just want you to send somebody to teach us. We don't want to become Muslim, but you send somebody to come teach us, somebody trustworthy. And so Abu Ubaidah was sent initially to them. Eventually, they will become Muslim. And you have a lot of other delegations from Yemen who are coming and accepting Islam. And Yemen, you know, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to say that I smell the fragrance of Jannah, I smell the fragrance of Ar-Rahman from Jannah, or I smell the fragrance of Rahman coming from Yemen. So I smell the fragrance of Rahman coming from Yemen. And Owais Qarni, radiallahu anhu, is from Yemen. He is the leader of the Tabi. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gifted him his cloak that was brought to him by Omar and Ali. And we'll talk about him later, inshallah, because his connection with Ali. And he was martyred in the defense of Ali. So we'll talk again, that's a name that's going to come up later, but it's an important name to know. So he's from Yemen. There are many other, and when you start reading about these delegations that came from Yemen and how they accepted Islam and their attitudes, it's just something so special, and you know, it just shows you their connection with Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so initially, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu to Yemen, you know, in charge of an army to go and spread Islam, you know, but he was met with some resistance, and so eventually, you know, Khalid will be called back, and then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will send Ali radiallahu anhu there. So Ali, you know, when he's being dispatched to go to Yemen, you know, in charge of this army, some of which remained there, some of Khalid radiallahu anhu's army remained there, and then some other men are going with Ali radiallahu anhu, and then they'll kind of become one army. So Ali, you know, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that I'm sending you there as a judge, as a qadi. And so Ali radiallahu anhu, he says, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know, you are sending me to such an ancient people as a judge, so how will I judge between them? You know, because if you look at the Yemeni civilization, it goes back thousands of years. Very advanced civilization. You know, Bilqis, the Queen of Sheba, you know, that's where she was. They had, you know, modern agriculture way back then. They had a huge dam, you know, that they had built thousands of years before, and so this was very, very advanced, very, I guess, you know, advanced civilization. Let me just put it that way. So very advanced civilization. So this is what Ali is saying. You're sending me to go judge between these people. So how will I judge? And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, you know, do not make any decision until you have heard from the second what you have heard from the first. You know, so, you know, when the first party comes to you and they say something to you, you know, don't go ahead and make up your mind until you've heard from the second, you know, until the second party also has their opportunity to voice their position. And we see this, you know, with ourselves, that, you know, first person that comes and tells us something, oh, you know, and then we're all up in arms, you know, against whoever they're talking about, you know, without, you know, any consideration for anything. And this is not justice. So, and then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made dua for him, placed his hand on his chest and made dua for him. after which Ali radiallahu anhu said, after that, I had no hesitation in making decisions. Because this instilled that serenity within him and the ability within him to make these decisions. So when Ali radiallahu anhu goes, you'll see that he goes to Yemen, and the people, when he goes, his approach is such that the people are very receptive to him, and you see Islam spread very quickly, and this is why a lot of these delegations are now coming, and because they've had that contact with Ali, you like I said, once you start reading about those delegations, you see just their attitudes are very different than anybody else. And this is also why after Karbala, there will be many of Ahlul Bayt who will eventually settle there in Yemen. So just keep that in mind. While Ali radiallahu anhu is there in Yemen, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam let me take care of this. I'll be back online in a minute. Hello?
Hey, don't mean to bother you. You got just a minute?
Yeah, quick. And then I'll call you back in a little while. No. No. Okay. Hang on a second. Hang on. I'm pulling them up. Yeah, pretty much burned her skin there. Yes. Yeah, she's gonna need some antibiotics. She's gonna need some antibiotics and some another type of cream called Silverdine. No. No, I think what we're seeing now is basically what happened underneath, and now it's come out. Then it broke through, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so she needs some antibiotics and some Silverdine. Let me let me know what they do at the clinic, and I'll call you probably about 3:30ish. Okay. Okay. You're welcome. I'll talk to you later. Depends on the pain level. Yeah, then I think she'll be fine. Oh yeah, she needs to stay off. probably about 4 or 5 days. Yep. Yeah. Okay. 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 Bye.
Joining meeting now.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm back. What we were talking about was, so all these delegations, because of their contact with Ali, you can see the spirituality within them. And like we've said before, there is no wali without Ali. And there is no knowledge without going through that door of Ali. And so we see this throughout, and we'll see this throughout, and we see this now, and we'll see this, even during the time of the Khulafai Rashidin. Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and then of course Ali and Hassan, alayhi salam, and all of them. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, while Ali radiallahu anhu is in Yemen, he makes the announcement for the intention of making the Hajj. So if you remember, the year before, he sent Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu as the Amir of the Hajj, but Ali radiallahu anhu was sent, to recite the verses, and we spoke about that, before. Now he's going to go himself, and he puts the word out, so that the word spreads, so that whoever wants to come and join him can come and join him. And we'll see this, so once the word gets out, it spreads very quickly throughout Arabia, and a large number of people are desiring to come and make the Hajj with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so you get delegations that start coming to Medina Munawwara with this intention, that they're going to join him in the Hajj. And then you have other people that start moving toward Mecca itself, those people that were further south start coming toward Mecca to join him in the Hajj. He himself, is making arrangements. And then at the end of the month of Dhul Qa'dah, of the 10th year of Hijrah, he sets out with, with all the companions towards Mecca for the Hajj. Ali, as I said, at this time is still in Yemen. So when news reaches him of the intention of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he sets out, starts making arrangements to come and join Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he's bringing his whole army with him. When you're moving with an army, you don't move very fast. And the larger the army, the slower you move. And so, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam enters Makkah, performs the Umrah, and he comes with his animals for sacrifice. So he brought with him 100 camels and 1 cow. The cow was to be sacrificed on behalf of the wives, and the camels he was to sacrifice on behalf of himself. So 100 camels for the sacrifice. There are 3, forms of Hajj. You have what's known as Hajj Qiran, Hajj Tamattu, and Hajj Ifrad. So Tamattu is what most people make, and it's one of the simplest ones. So Tamattu is, I make intention for the Hajj, so as I enter the miqat, which is the point of where you have to put on the ihram, I put on my ihram, I enter Makkah, I make Umrah, and then after Umrah I take off the ihram, and now I wait for the Hajj time to begin. And then on the 8th of Zil Hajj, I put on the ihram again, and I make my way to Mina. Okay, so this is what most people do. And then you do perform the rites of the Hajj. Ifrad is basically mainly done by those people that live there, like in Mecca or in the surrounding area. They simply put on the ihram and go directly to Mina and start the Hajj without making Umrah. Some other people also end up having to do this these days because their transportation is late coming into Mecca, so they end up going straight to Mina, or some of them even end up straight. If they're delayed too much, they end up straight in Arafat. Qiran is the most difficult because you put on the ihram from the miqat. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the end of Zil Qa'dah, he puts on the ihram and sets out for Mecca. He stays in the condition of ihram. He enters Mecca. He makes tawaf, and then he stays in ihram. The ihram doesn't come off until after the Hajj. Okay, so you stay in the ihram the whole time. So it's the most difficult form because all of the things that are forbidden in the ihram remain forbidden for you that whole time. You can't cut your hair, you can't cut your nails, you can't, there's so many things you can't do. So when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam entered, and he makes his umrah, he declared to everybody else that he had made the intention for Qiran. And so there were other people who also wanted to do that, but he said that only those people who have brought their animals with them can do this. So this is only, everyone else he ordered that they would have to take off their ihram after the Umrah, and then they put it back on when it's time for Hajj. Ali, when the army is slowing him down, he leaves the army and comes by himself. He says, y'all slowing me down, I gotta go. So he enters Mecca with the ihram, he makes the Umrah, and when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gives the command that everyone else has to come out of their ihram, Ali didn't have any animals. He's coming from Yemen. He had, and he left in a rush. So he comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, "Ya Rasulullah, make an exception for me." And he says, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "I've already given the command, and those who didn't bring their animals need to take off their ihram." So Ali says, "Ya Rasulullah, so do something." So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Fine. I will give you 37 of my camels, and these will be your animals for slaughter." So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam kept 63 for himself, one for every year of his life, and he gives 37 to Ali. And so this is how Ali is also able to perform the Qiran Hajj with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And of course they perform the Hajj. The army, or Ali radiallahu anhu's army eventually make it to Mecca, but they get there, just after the Hajj. And so while Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is there, and actually kind of backtrack here a little bit. And of course they had gone as an army. They had fought some battles in Yemen. They had been gone for 4 months. Some of them had been gone even longer because they had also gone in the original army with Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu. Yemeni clothing was considered high fashion. It was considered very, very good quality clothing and good style clothing. So people that wore Yemeni clothing, they were well dressed. And so amongst the spoils that they had attained, in their expeditions was a lot of this clothing. And so they wanted to put this on as they entered the city. And Ali had told them when he left, he said, no one is to touch any of the spoils because I want Rasulullah to distribute it himself. But Ali had already taken something from it. But of course he's the commander of the army. But he had told everybody else, I want Rasulullah to distribute it to y'all. So I don't want anybody taking anything from this. So when the army finally arrives on the outskirts of Makkah, Ali goes to them with the intent, because then he's going to lead them in as the army, as Rasulullah had sent them out. But when he arrives, he sees that they, second in command was not as strict as Ali on them. So the second in command, who he'd left in charge, said, okay, yeah, y'all can, they asked him, he said, okay, you can put on your clothes. So these are people who've been out for at least 4 months, some for even longer than that, in the desert, with no dry cleaning around. You don't have a coin laundry that you can go wash your clothes. And they want to put on some nice clothes to come and meet Rasulullah, but Ali had forbidden it. But when he gets back, well, they got these clothes on. When Ali sees this, he orders them to take the clothes off and put the regular clothes back on, because he said, I want Rasulullah to distribute this. So this is, of course, they do it because he's commanded it. They didn't like it. So then eventually they come in, they meet, Rasulullah meets them. He will eventually distribute the spoils of war to them. But some of them will come to Rasulullah in Makkah and complain about Ali. And so, as we've said before so many times, and we will say again and again, two main companions of Rasulullah that he would not hear anything against. Anyone who had an issue with them or a complaint against them, they're the ones who would get chastised. Didn't matter what the complaint was, he was not going to have any of it. And those two companions are Abu Bakr and Ali. No one ever dared complain against Bibi Fatima Salamullahi alayha. That just wasn't going to happen, and they knew that. But these two, there were complaints against, and whoever brought a complaint against them ended up getting chastised. And it's kind of interesting. One time there was an issue between Abu Bakr and Umar, radiallahu anhu. And so voices were raised, so when so Umar came to Rasulullah and complained about Abu Bakr, and Rasulullah chastised Umar. And he says to him, he says that when everyone else was saying that I was a liar, Abu Bakr is the one who was saying that I was truthful. And and he chastised him so harshly that Abu Bakr came, and Abu Bakr, being the person that he was, he felt bad for Umar. And he says to Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, it was my fault. And Rasulullah says, no, not having this. So when these people came and they complained about Ali, Rasulullah, he asked them, he says, am I not closer? Because they said, he did this, but he took this from the spoils of war. And he says, well, Ali deserves even more than that. And then he asked them, he says, am I not closer to the believers than their own souls? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this in Surah Ahzab. النبي أولى بالمؤمنين من أنفسهم. That this Prophet ﷺ is closer to the believers than their own selves, than their own souls. So he says, am I not closer to the believers than their own souls? And they said, yes. So then he says to them, he says that to whomever I am close, Ali is also close. So after this, you know, they didn't say anything further. So eventually, you know, the order is given to set out from Mecca. And we talked about this when we talked about the Hajj on Fridays, you know, a few weeks ago, or several weeks ago. So as they're going back, so you have some people, you know, who were there. So if you remember, you know, there were roughly 124,000 companions of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam who had joined him in the Hajj. And that number is interesting. All of these numbers are interesting. You know, like we look at like Badr, the Battle of Badr. How many companions? 313, right? Of the 124,000 prophets, how many are Rasul? 313. Okay? So each one is being represented. As I said, there are 124,000 companions of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in Hujjatul Wada, in the Hajj. How many prophets? 124,000, roughly, right? Plus or minus. Again, each one is being represented. And you know, this is why, you know, like when we see, you know, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you know, compared Abu Bakr and his demeanor and his character to that of Ibrahim alayhi salam. You know, and he compares Umar radhiyallahu anhu's character and demeanor to Musa alayhi salam. And so there are so many others that he, you know, made these comparisons for. So each prophet is being represented at Hujjatul Wada by one of the companions. So anyway, so some of these companions stay in Mecca because that's where they're from. Some of them left, you know, to their homes at other places. But the vast majority of these companions who joined Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in the Hajj are now going to go back with him to Medina Munawwara. And as they're going back, this is when, you know, there were some others who also complained against Ali. Some others in the army who again complained against Ali. And so this is when they stop at Ghadir. You know, Ghadir is an oasis, in the desert between Mecca and Medina. And you'd have a lot of caravans that whenever they would go by, that's where they'd stop because there's water and there's shade. And when you're in the desert, two things you need the most: water and shade. And so here, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he stops here, and there are some groups that had started to leave, so they were going to split off from here, go wherever they had come from. And so when the issue comes up again, now Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam tells Bilal to call them back. And Bilal, you know, the way he would call people, one of the ways he would call people was he would make adhan. He makes the adhan, and everybody knows, well, it's not time for salat, so there must be something. So everybody would come because now they knew Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam wanted to say something to them. So all of them gather, and once he has the attention of everybody, he calls Sayyidina Ali beside himself. He brings Ali with him, and he asks again. He says, "Am I not closer to the believers than their own selves?" And they said, "Yes." And this is when he raises the hand of Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh, and he makes this famous statement of "Man kunta mawla, fahada Aliyun mawla." That for whomsoever I am his mawla, so too is Ali his mawla. And mawla here is like in aqa, master, leader, you know, the one, I guess in English you could say the one who is your everything. You know, because again, you know, we've talked about this before. Mawla can have many meanings. So, you know, in the Quran, in Surah Baqarah, at the end, we say what? Anta Mawlana, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are our Mawla. So here, for Allah, when it's used, it has a different meaning. For Allah, when Mawla is used, you know, it means cherisher, creator, all of these things. When it's used for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's used as, you know, master, leader, you know, and all of these other aspects of it. It can also be used in the opposite. It can also mean servant. And this is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or one of the reasons why he draws this analogy. So whomsoever I am his Mawla, so too is Ali his Mawla. So no one can come back and say later on, no. When he said Ali is the Mawla, it meant this other way. No. It meant the way we accept Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as our leader and our master, we also accept Ali as our leader and our master. Okay. Understanding that Ali's leadership and mastery over us is because of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And also here he says, Man kunta mawla fahada aliyun mawla. There are some narrations that simply say, Man kunta mawla fa aliyun mawla. Hada is ismu ishara. You know, so when you say like if I say, if I pick up a book and I say this book, that implies, or what is understood there, if I'm saying this book is a book that I can see, and everybody else who I'm addressing sees that same book. So when he says, for whomsoever I am his Mawla, so too this Ali is his Mawla. Hada, this Ali is his Mawla. Not any other Ali. Because there are, like we talked about before, so many people who will try to take things that Ali did and say, no, it wasn't that Ali, it was some other Ali. Okay? So here, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, made it so everyone seeing knows who it is and there is no doubt. So when we look at this narration, because there are people who will, because of their animosity to Ali, which they hide, but it comes out in one way or the other. Two things that are very difficult to hide: love and hatred. Love and animosity is hard to hide. So those who have animosity against Ali, when you talk about this hadith, they will start, oh no, it's only in one place and it's safe. So they'll quote it to you from a book that has a chain of narrations that may be weak. But they don't quote it from any other book, and they make it seem like, oh, that's the only one place that it is. And YouTube is full of these guys. But if I look at this hadith, it's the only hadith that's narrated by all 10 of the Ashra Mubashara, 10 of those given the glad tidings of paradise. It is narrated by 9 of the wives of Rasulullah. It is narrated in total by 30 plus companions of Rasulullah with multiple varying chains. It is mentioned in Tirmizi. It is mentioned by Nisa'i. These are muhaddiseen, scholars of hadith. It is mentioned by At-Tabari through multiple chains of narrators. Musnad ibn Ahmad, again, multiple chains of narrators. Musannaf ibn Abi Shayba, varying chains of narrators. Imam Hakim's Mustadrak, again, varying chains of narrators. The vast majority of whom these scholars of hadith say is Sahih. And then there's a whole list of other narrators of books that this hadith is in. But again, if I tell people that the sky is blue, somebody's going to dispute that too. Everything is disputed. You're going to find somebody that's going to dispute everything. And that's just the nature, or not the nature, that's the way people are. I won't say that's their nature, but that's the way people are. So, but for those who have the love of Ali, it's very easy to see that this is not something that can legitimately be disputed. As I said, more than 30 narrators within the companions themselves. There is no other hadith that has that many different narrators within the companions. There is no other hadith that has all 10 of the Ashra Mubashara as its narrators. And then various aspects of this that are implied in various other hadiths, which are in Bukhari and Muslim and various other places as well. So, I've gone over a little bit today. We had that pause in between, unfortunately. Kind of comes with the territory of taking care of people. But I'm going to stop the class here. There was a question that somebody had, which I'll sort of address right now, and then we'll address it in a little bit more detail later on. Like they're varying, like when we look at historically, various people, and you'll see one, I guess, narration that talks about, this person, dying when they were 4, and then you see another narration that's talking about them being 70 years old. So, and yet the name is the same. So then the question is, why is this just such a huge discrepancy here? And part of this gets into confusion of names. And especially within Ahlul Bayt, you will see the same names being repeated. And even in other families. So, they didn't have the abbreviation of junior or whatever else then. So if I look at like Imam Hussein al-Islam, well, 3 of his sons were named Ali. You have Ali Akbar, Ali Awsat, and Ali Asghar. So if I asked them their name, they would simply say Ali. If I said Ali who, they would say Ali bin Hussein. That was all 3 of them. Okay. And this is why when Imam Zain al-Abidin was taken in front of Ibn Ziyad, he asked him, because Imam Zain al-Abidin is Ali Awsat. He asked him, he said, what's your name? He says, Ali. He said, Ali who? He said, Ali bin Hussein. And he says, he was killed in the battle. Because Ali Akbar and Ali Awsat, both of them were killed. Ali Akbar and Ali Asghar were both killed in Karbala. And he's referring to Ali Akbar. He says, he was killed in the battle. He says, that was my older brother, whose name was also Ali. So, you'll see this creates a lot of confusion for some people. So that's why you're going to get varying reports and narrations. And when you look at, and you also have to look at who's reporting what. If I look at, like, simply again coming back to this simple example of Ali Akbar. So anybody who was in the battle, on the other side, they knew Ali Akbar alayhi salam was martyred. So now if they went someplace and were talking, they'll talk, we killed Ali Akbar in the battle. They won't say Ali Akbar, they'll simply say, we killed Ali bin Hussein in the battle. And then that propagates on. And so you get varying narrations. It's accurate, but it's not talking about, but if somebody's talking specifically about Imam Zain al-Abidin and him living on, for years later, well, that gets confusing.
So Hussein bin Laden, which one it was?
What's that?
Hussein bin Laden, which one it was? Which Ali was?
Ali Awsat. He was the middle Ali. Yes. So Ali Akbar was the older son, and then Ali Asghar was the 6-month-old baby. So Imam Zain al-Abidin, and that's why most of us, we simply say Imam Zain al-Abidin. If I look at the Imams, who a lot of people say, oh, these are Shia Imams. No, they're Sunni Imams. So you look at the name of Ali repeating so many times. You have Imam Ali Rida, who is the son of Imam Musa Qadim, You have his grandson Ali Naqi. So you see those names again repeating. And so, if you don't have, and this is where a lot of people, in their writings got so confused, and then you start seeing these stories about so-and-so, and then you see another story about that same person, years later after they had died. But again, the one who passed away was a different one. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is simply people making up stories. So you have a lot of that as well. And that's why, like when we talk here, especially like things that people are disputing, I try to give the background to it and refer to the various, narrators and stuff, or narrations, and where they are, so that we understand. Because there's so many things that are in the books of hadith, but people try to brush them off because they're in favor of Ahlul Bayt as simply history. And we've talked about that, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more this coming Friday as well, inshallah. So you have to be very mindful, and there's certain things like, and the specific question here was about the daughter of Imam Hussein al-Islam, Sakina. Sakina or Sukaina, either pronunciation. And she was there in Karbala, and so there's some people who talk about her like she died when she was 4. She was older than 4 when she was in Karbala. If you look at the more legitimate narrations, she was like maybe in her early teens or around there at the time of Karbala. You have certain groups that their whole purpose of talking about Karbala is simply to make people cry. And there's nothing wrong, and it's something, and it is a sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to listen to it and cry about it. But there's those cries, those tears are crocodile tears. And those guys are the ones who really can work a story. And unfortunately, if you look at most of the Maulwis and people think that, they're really very knowledgeable. They're good storytellers, and that's an art. So they tell you the story without any lessons, and they want a certain impact, so they want you to become emotional. So they'll change things within the story to fit their agenda. And even like the hadith that we were talking about right at the beginning, about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam returning, the son, asking or ordering or commanding the son to come back for Ali, but if you see some of the counter arguments to that, they'll talk about, how could Ali leave his salat and all of these, but that also tells you that they have no concept or no understanding of the authority and the status of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His status is not above the Creator. He is the creation. But when the Creator has given him authority and has told us, in the Quran, in various places, to obey and adhere to everything he says, then when he makes that command, then it has to be followed. Now we'll talk about Bibi Sakina later, I guess, when we kind of get to that point in time, inshallah. But like I said, the 4-year-old one is something that's made up. When we're talking about the Sakina that was in Karbala with Imam Hussein al-Islam. But like I said, you're going to see discrepancies based on some of it's legitimate based on this because somebody's they only saw part of the picture, and so it wasn't like an intentional thing. There are other things that are intentional. Any other questions? No. Well, leave me hanging.
Well, I want to ask you one question. You
Yes.
mentioned 133,000 people go with Rasulullah to the
124,000.
Okay.
So people in the Hajj
Uh-huh.
with the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is estimated, like in Hujjat al-Wada in Arafat,
Okay.
there were 124,000 companions there.
So each one represented each prophet?
Each one represented one prophet.
One prophet.
One prophet. Okay, so that's why there are, and according to the hadith of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, there are roughly 124,000 prophets that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala sent, plus or minus. They all came with the same message, of the oneness of Allah, and they all came and they told their people about the coming of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They also told their people about the coming of Dajjal and the fitna of Dajjal. Okay. So these are three things in common that they all told.
So
Okay.
come in
There-
those- okay, yeah.
Yeah. So there were some differences depending on who they were sent to. So Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is the universal prophet. He was sent to all of creation. The other prophets were local prophets. They were sent to a specific people. Bani Israel received many of them.
They're basically Jewish people.
Yes. So because they are the descendants of Yaqub alayhi salam, who is the son of Ishaq alayhi salam, who is the son of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So, so that's why it's Bani Israel, because the nickname of Yaqub alayhi salam was Israel. So we say Bani Israel, the progeny of Israel. And that's why there are 12 tribes, because Yaqub alayhi salam had 12 sons. But there were many prophets that were sent to them, the final one being Isa alayhi salam, Jesus.
So he's
Yes.
Jewish also?
Yes, he was sent to Bani Israel and he was from amongst them. And
They
that,
don't even believe in his hill.
what's that?
I mean, even Jewish people, they don't believe.
Yeah,
in
the Jews denied him.
him.
Yeah, the Jewish people denied him.
That's why they're not even Christian. So Isa is a representative of Christian, right?
Well, the Christians say that they follow Isa alayhi salam.
Yeah, that's what they
Yeah,
claim.
that's what they claim. So claims and reality, a lot of times don't add up, aren't the same thing, as is this case. Just like the Jews claim to be following Musa alayhi salam. Yet even in their own books we see various, where they disobeyed him even during his time. So what can you expect from them now?
Can I ask you a question, Doctor? I want to correct me if I'm wrong. What I heard is Jewish people, they have a 13 holiday. All them 13 were against Christianity. That's true.
No, well, the question there is that he says he heard somewhere that Jewish people have 13 holidays, all of which are against the Christians. No, what they did was, actually, amongst the Jewish people, if I remember correctly, the only real main holiday that they have that is truly religious is Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. Okay. Which coincides to around the Hajj time. Okay, so because they also follow a lunar calendar from a religious. Okay. However, because wherever they go, they would attach certain holidays to make themselves fit into the people. So like here they have Hanukkah. So whenever Christmas comes around, Hanukkah comes up. Hanukkah is not a religious holiday from a religious standpoint. It's a social holiday that they've made while here and made it coincide because again, they are also supposed to be following the lunar calendar, and yet Hanukkah comes every December at Christmas time. So that way they can also be off for Hanukkah. So yeah, so that's kind of a different thing. Okay.
That's when I'm sorry for that. I think when during Ramadan, I think I seen a video where some of the Muslims kicked out of the
Masjid al-Aqsa.
right.
Yeah, so every Ramadan they do this, and they even do it, before and after Ramadan as well. It doesn't end, and they become more and more blatant about it. As far as the Muslim worshippers in Al-Aqsa, being harassed and beaten, and it's sad, that they're able to do this, and yet the so-called Muslim countries that are supposed to be Muslim countries, no one says anything. No one does anything, because they're all in cahoots with each other, and like also, and of course, when they beat them and do this, then they say, oh, it's their fault. It's like me coming to your house and beating on you, and then saying, oh, you made me do it. This is your fault. And that's basically what they do. And just like when they were shooting up Aqsa, the glass. They hit the windows and stuff. The glass fell into the masjid, and their claim was, no, this was they did it themselves. Well, those people were inside the masjid. If they did something, the glass would have fallen outside. But yeah.
So Aqsa is a Quds, right?
Yes, Quds. Yes.
I flew over to it, and when I went to I was down in Jordan.
Yes.
I flew to it. I was so close, you could see it.
You could see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, Masjid al-Aqsa, this is the second masjid built on the earth. The Kaaba, or house of worship, built on the earth. The Kaaba is the first. Masjid al-Aqsa is the second.
During what time it built?
Both were kind of origins is Ibrahim alayhi salam.
Okay.
Yeah.
During his time.
Yeah.
Was it one built for the angels too?
No, that's Baytul Ma'mur. That's in the heavens. That's above the Kaaba. That's directly above the Kaaba. So Baytul Ma'mur is where the angels. That's sort of, you can think of that like the Kaaba for the angels in the heavens, or the Kaaba in the heavens. So inshallah we'll end here. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us, and we'll continue with Ahlul Bayt next week, and may He guide us and grant us true knowledge that's useful, and grant us His love and the love of His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, his companions, all of them inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.